Amir walked down the lonely road with a small bag in his hand and a quiet sadness in his heart. The morning sky was covered with light clouds and the winds felt cold as they passed by him. He had no car, no house, and no family beside him now. His children had grown up and moved away, leaving him behind after a long disagreement that broke the bond he once protected with all his strength. He tried to reach them many times, but they stopped answering him, so he accepted his silence and looked for a place where he could start a new life. That search brought him to a forgotten village where an old pilot's mansion was being sold for only $10 because no one wanted to take the risk of repairing it. When Amir reached the edge of the property, he stopped for a moment and looked at the huge land in front of him. Tall grass moved with the wind and dry leaves covered the broken path that led to the house. The mansion looked like a sleeping giant waiting for someone brave enough to wake it. Its windows were cracked and the roof had holes that showed the sky through them. The wooden fence had fallen on one side and weeds wrapped around the broken gate. But even with all this damage, Amir felt a strange pull toward the place, as if it was calling him with a quiet voice. He pushed the gate gently, and it creaked softly, as if complaining after years of being untouched. Amir stepped inside and walked through the yard with slow, careful steps. He felt the weight of his past on his shoulders, yet the air around him felt strangely light. For a long time he had wished for a chance to build something new with his own hands, and maybe this mansion would be that chance. He knew it would not be easy, but he had lived a life full of hard days, so difficulty did not scare him. Amir stood in front of the mansion and noticed a faded wooden sign above the door that said Pilot House with a pair of carved wings under it. He imagined the pilot who once lived here, a man who flew across the world and returned home to this quiet place. He wondered what stories the pilot left behind and why the house was abandoned after his passing. The villagers had told Amir that the pilot lived alone in his last years and kept many secrets locked away inside the mansion. This made Amir curious, but he pushed the thought aside for the moment and reached for the door handle. When he entered the hall, a cold rush of air brushed past his face. The house smelled of dust and age, and the floor creaked with every step he took. Old furniture stood under white sheets like silent guards waiting for orders. A soft echo followed him as he moved deeper into the hall. Amir lifted one of the sheets and saw a beautiful wooden table with carved borders. Even though dust covered it, the design still showed care and effort. He felt a small spark of joy because he knew something beautiful could be found even in ruined places. He kept walking until he reached the living room. A large picture hung on the wall showing the pilot wearing a uniform and smiling proudly next to a small plane. Amir stared at the picture and felt a quiet connection with the man. Both of them knew the feeling of standing strong while life pushed them down again and again. Amir whispered that the pilot must have loved this place very much because everything in the room was arranged with purpose, even though time had taken its toll. He continued exploring the lower floor and found a kitchen filled with old utensils and dusty shelves. The counters were broken and the sink was rusty, but he imagined how once this place must have been warm with the smell of fresh food and laughter. Amir closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about his children when they were young and how they ran around the kitchen asking him for treats. Those memories brought both warmth and pain to his heart because they reminded him of a life he once had and lost. After looking around the first floor, Amir decided to check the upper level. He walked up the staircase slowly because some steps were weak and he did not want to break them. When he reached the top, he saw a long hallway with many doors on both sides. He opened the first door and stepped inside a room filled with toys and books scattered on the floor. The small bed near the wall was covered in dust, but the design of the room suggested it once belonged to a child who loved to dream about the sky because the wallpaper showed faded stars and clouds. Amir felt a sting in his chest as he remembered how he used to read stories to his children when they were little. He wished he could go back to those days, but life moved forward and left him behind. He gently closed the door and walked to the next room, which was empty except for a broken chair. The third room, however, made him stop at the entrance because it felt different from the others. The air inside was colder and the sunlight did not enter the room even though the window was open. He stepped inside and noticed that the floor had no dust on it, which was strange because every other room was covered with thick layers. At the center of the room was a wooden trunk that looked old but well taken care of. Amir kneeled beside it and placed his hand on the surface. The wood felt smooth and strong, and the latch was still in good shape. With a slow breath, he opened the trunk and looked inside. There were old flight logs, maps, medals, and photographs neatly arranged as if the pilot wanted someone to find them. Under the papers, Amir noticed a cloth wrapped around something heavy. He lifted it carefully and unwrapped the cloth to reveal a metal case with unusual markings on it. The metal felt cold under his fingers, and the case seemed to hum softly, as if holding something important inside. Amir felt his heart beat faster, and he wondered what the pilot had hidden there. He looked around the room, but everything else was empty, which made the case even more mysterious. He placed the case back in the trunk and closed it, but his mind kept returning to it. He felt that the pilot had left behind a message or a secret that only the right person could understand. Amir did not know if he was that person, but the thought of it made him feel alive after many years of loneliness. As he walked out of the room, the strange cold feeling faded, and the hallway returned to its normal quiet state. Amir went downstairs again and looked through the dusty windows at the wide open land outside. Even though the mansion was broken and filled with silence, he felt something he had not felt in a long time, which was hope. He believed that maybe this place would give him a new path, a new story, and a new reason to move forward. The next morning, Amir woke up on the floor of the old living room feeling a light ache in his back, but also a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. Sunlight entered through the cracked windows and touched the dusty furniture, making the house look less dark than before. He stood up slowly, stretched his arms, and looked around the room again, trying to imagine how it would look once he cleaned it. The thought brought a faint smile to his face because it had been a long time since he felt excited about anything in life. Today he planned to explore the mansion properly and begin clearing out the mess that time had left behind. He stepped into the hallway and took a deep breath of the cool morning air. The old walls echoed lightly with every movement he made, and the loose floorboards creaked beneath his feet. Amir walked to the kitchen and washed his face with water from a bottle he brought with him because the taps in the house were still dry. He looked at the broken sink and imagined repairing it one day when he had enough money and tools. For now he had only his hands, his determination, and the $10 mansion that felt like a gift from fate. As Amir finished washing his face, he heard a soft sound from the upper floor, like something sliding across the wooden surface. He froze for a moment because he had lived alone for years and was not used to unexpected sounds. The villagers had warned him that the mansion was strange and that people avoided it not only because of its broken condition but because they believed the pilot left behind secrets. Amir gathered his courage and walked toward the staircase, reminding himself that old houses often made noises when the wind passed through them. He climbed the stairs slowly and reached the hallway where the doors stood silently as before. The memory of the cold room and the metal case returned to him, but he pushed the thought aside and opened the first room instead. Dust rose around his feet and toys lay scattered where he left them yesterday. Nothing had changed. He stepped back into the hallway and opened the next door. Again, nothing. Everything inside was untouched. Then he walked to the third room, the one that felt cold, the one with the wooden trunk. When he placed his hand on the doorknob, he felt a quiet chill against his skin, and his heart began to beat faster. He opened the door and stepped inside. The room looked exactly as he had seen it the previous day. No dust on the floor, no sunlight even though the window was open, and the same stillness in the air that felt almost heavy. Amir walked to the trunk and lifted the lid. Everything inside was in place. The flight logs, the medals, the maps, and the strange metal case wrapped in cloth. This time, though, he felt a stronger pull toward the case, as if it wanted him to open it. He held it in his hands for a moment, and tried to listen to the soft hum it produced. It felt gentle but unsettling. Amir sat on the floor, holding the case carefully. He knew he should open it because it would not let him rest until he understood what the pilot had hidden. With a slow breath, he tapped the small metal latch, and the case opened with a soft sound. Inside he saw neatly arranged items that made him pause in surprise because they were not what he expected. There were letters sealed in envelopes, a small diary, and a set of old photographs tied with a string. Amir gently lifted the photos and saw the pilot standing with a young boy who looked about 10 years old. The boy had bright eyes and a wide smile that showed he trusted the pilot deeply. Amir turned the photo and saw a date written in faded ink along with a short message that said, "For my son." His breath caught in his throat because he never knew the pilot had a child. The villagers never mentioned anything about a family. Amir took out the diary and opened it. The first page began with a simple line that said, "This house keeps memories that must be protected." As Amir read further, he learned that the pilot once lived here with his wife and their son. They spent many years traveling together, visiting different countries and enjoying life, but one year the pilot lost them both in an accident during a heavy storm while he was away on duty. The pilot returned to an empty house filled with silence and sorrow. According to the diary, he never recovered fully from the loss, but he tried to preserve every memory he had of his family. The metal case was part of that effort because inside it, he kept the most precious items that belonged to them. Amir felt his eyes grow warm because he understood what the pilot had gone through. Losing family was a pain Amir understood too well, even if the reason was different. As he kept reading the diary, Amir discovered something else. The pilot wrote that he wanted someone kind and lonely like him to find the house one day. Someone who would not destroy it or sell it, but instead understand the value of memories and rebuild the home with care. The words touched Amir deeply because it felt as if the pilot had written those lines for him directly. He closed the diary gently and held it close to his chest for a moment, letting the emotions settle in his heart. When Amir placed everything back in the case, he noticed another small envelope hidden under the cloth. It was sealed and had his name written on it. Amir stared at it in disbelief. He had never met the pilot, and yet the envelope carried his name. His hands shook as he opened it and pulled out a letter. The handwriting was old but clear. The letter said that the pilot believed someone like Amir would come one day, and that the house would choose the right person who needed it the most. The letter also mentioned that Amir should not be afraid of the strange cold in the room because it was only the house holding on to old memories, not something harmful. Amir felt a mix of comfort and confusion. How did the pilot know his name? How could a letter written many years ago carry a message for him? He looked around the room unsure of what to think, but he felt no fear. Instead, he felt a sense of belonging, as if the house itself welcomed him. Amir closed the case carefully, placed it back in the trunk, and stood up with a slow breath. The air in the room felt warmer now, as if the house released a deep sigh of relief. He walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. The hallway felt different, too lighter somehow. Amir went downstairs and stepped into the yard where sunlight spread across the land with a golden glow. He felt a strong desire to rebuild this place and bring life back into it. The mansion was not just an old house anymore. It was a story waiting for a new beginning, and Amir felt ready to become a part of that story. He knew the journey ahead would be long and full of challenges, but for the first time in many years he felt hope growing in his heart like a small bright flame that refused to fade. In the days that followed, Amir began cleaning the mansion from morning till evening, and every passing hour made him feel more connected to the place. The dust that once covered every corner slowly faded as he swept the floors, washed the walls, and opened all the windows to let sunlight inside. The house that once stood silent and forgotten now breathed with a gentle warmth. Amir felt proud of every small change he made because each improvement reminded him that he still had the strength to rebuild something with his own hands. The loneliness that once controlled his heart started to loosen its grip as the house gave him company with every sound and every whisper of wind through the old halls. One day he decided to clean the backyard, which was covered with tall grass, broken branches, and pieces of rusted metal. The wind blew gently as he worked, and the sky looked clear with soft sunlight shining on the open land. As Amir cut through the thick weeds, he uncovered an old stone path that led to a smaller building behind the mansion. The structure looked like a storage house or maybe a workshop used by the pilot long ago. Its wooden door was half broken and vines wrapped around the sides like green ropes. Amir felt a sudden curiosity about what could be inside, so he walked toward it with slow steps. When he pushed the door open, a wave of warm air escaped, and a soft smell of old leather and oil filled the space. Inside he saw shelves filled with boxes, tools, and old equipment used for repairing machines. There was a workbench with scattered screws and metal parts, which suggested that the pilot often spent time here working on his personal projects. Amir walked deeper into the workshop and noticed a large covered shape in the corner. He removed the cloth gently, and his eyes widened with surprise. Under the cloth stood a small aircraft engine carefully placed on a wooden stand. The metal still looked strong, even though dust surrounded it. Amir touched the engine with gentle fingers and felt the cold metal beneath his hand. He had never seen such a thing up close before, and he imagined the pilot working on it with care and dedication. Beside the engine he found a leather notebook that looked similar to the diary he found earlier. When he opened it he discovered sketches and plans for a small flying machine the pilot had planned to build for his son. Each page was filled with drawings, measurements, and notes written in loving detail. Amir felt his heart grow heavy again because he understood the pain behind the unfinished project. The pilot had dreams for his son and hoped to teach him how to fly, but fate never gave him the chance. After closing the notebook, Amir sat on the wooden bench inside the workshop and looked around quietly. The wind stirred the vines outside, and sunlight filtered through cracks in the wooden boards, making narrow golden lines on the dusty floor. Amir felt a deep respect for the pilot who had lived a life full of love, loss, and quiet strength. Now Amir felt responsible for preserving those memories and giving the house the life it had been waiting for. He stepped out of the workshop with a new plan in mind. He wanted to restore not only the mansion but also the land around it, because everything here felt like part of a story he had been chosen to continue. Over the next week, Amir worked on the yard, planting seeds, fixing the fence, and clearing the path. His hands hurt, his back ached, and he grew tired each night, but his heart felt lighter than it had in many years. Every morning he woke with a sense of purpose that gave him energy. The villagers who once avoided the mansion began noticing Amir's efforts from a distance. Some even approached the gate and asked about the progress. They seemed surprised that the house was finally coming back to life after so many years of silence. Amir remained humble and thanked them for their interest, though he kept the deeper secrets of the mansion to himself. One afternoon, while arranging the living room furniture, Amir heard the mailbox flap outside. He walked to the front door and found a letter placed inside. The envelope had no name on it, only the mansion's address written in neat handwriting. Amir opened it carefully and read the short message inside. It said that someone wanted to visit the house because they once knew the pilot and wished to see the place again. The letter mentioned a date, which was the coming weekend, and asked if Amir could allow the visit. Amir felt nervous because he had been living alone for so long and meeting strangers made him uneasy, but he respected the pilot's memory and believed that anyone connected to him deserved kindness. When the weekend arrived, Amir cleaned the house early in the morning and waited near the yard quietly. The sun stood high in the sky when a small car appeared on the road and stopped near the gate. A woman stepped out holding a small handbag. Her hair was gray, and her eyes carried a gentle sadness mixed with warmth. She walked slowly toward the gate, and Amir greeted her politely. She introduced herself as Mara, a childhood friend of the pilot. She explained that she had moved away many years ago but recently heard rumors that someone had bought the mansion. She felt drawn to return because she wanted to see the place where the pilot spent his final years. Amir invited her inside and guided her through the yard. Mara looked around with soft eyes and whispered that the place still felt familiar even after so many years. When she stepped into the mansion, she paused at the entrance as if hearing the echoes of old memories. She walked from room to room, touching the walls gently and smiling sadly at the old furniture. Amir watched her quietly and allowed her to take her time. When they reached the living room, she stopped in front of the picture of the pilot. Her eyes grew misty as she placed her hand on the frame. She shared stories about the pilot, describing him as a brave, kind man who never hesitated to help others. She said he was a person who loved the sky more than anything and dreamed of flying together with his family. Amir listened closely, feeling a deeper connection to the pilot than ever before. Mara then asked if she could see the upper floor. Amir felt a slight hesitation because of the cold room, but he nodded and guided her upstairs. She walked through the hallway and entered each room with calm steps, but when she reached the third room she stopped at the doorway, as if sensing the same strange chill that Amir once felt. Mara stepped inside slowly and looked at the wooden trunk in the center. She kneeled beside it and touched the surface with gentle fingers. She whispered that the pilot used to keep his most personal memories here. Amir remained silent and allowed her the moment. She opened the trunk and looked at the medals, the maps, and the old letters with a soft smile on her face. Then she noticed the metal case and lifted it with care. Amir watched her closely, wondering if she would also feel the strange hum it produced. She opened the case and saw the diary and photographs inside. When she held the picture of the pilot with his son, her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. She told Amir that the pilot loved his son more than anything in the world. She said that after losing his family he became a shadow of his former self, but he kept their memories alive by caring for this house. Mara closed the case gently and placed it back inside the trunk. She looked at Amir with soft eyes and told him that the house chose him for a reason. She said he carried the same quiet sadness the pilot once carried, and that the house needed someone like him to bring light back into it. Her words touched Amir deeply, and he felt a warm strength rise in his heart. After Mara left the mansion that evening, Amir stood alone in the yard, watching her car disappear down the quiet road. The sky was turning orange and gold as the sun lowered behind the hills, and the soft colors touched the broken walls of the old house, making them glow gently. Amir felt something change inside him after hearing Mara's words, because she spoke with such warmth and honesty that her voice seemed to stay in the air long after she left. She reminded him that the mansion was not just a forgotten building, but a place full of memories and dreams that were waiting to be carried forward. Amir felt honored that the house trusted him with that responsibility. In the days that followed, Amir worked even harder than before. He repaired the broken windows one by one, cleaned the remaining rooms, and polished the wooden floors until they shone faintly in the sunlight. The sound of his tools echoed through the halls, giving life to the mansion that once stood silent for many lonely years. Every nail he fixed and every wall he brushed made the house feel stronger and warmer. Amir felt his heart growing warmer too, because his days were no longer filled with emptiness. He woke each morning with purpose and slept each night feeling proud of what he had accomplished. One morning, while sweeping the staircase, Amir heard a knock at the front door. He walked down carefully and opened it to find two young villagers standing outside. They introduced themselves as brothers who lived nearby and said they had seen the changes happening in the mansion. They offered to help Amir with any heavy work he needed to finish. Amir felt surprised because he was not used to receiving help, but he smiled kindly and welcomed them inside. Soon they were lifting old furniture, repairing broken beams, and helping remove weeds from the yard. Their laughter and bright conversations filled the air, making the mansion feel more alive than ever. As the days passed, more villagers came offering help and sharing small gifts like tools and food. Some brought stories of the pilot, while others just wanted to see the transformation. Amir welcomed each one with gratitude and respect. He never expected this much kindness from people who barely knew him, but their presence reminded him that he was not as alone as he once believed. With every new face, the mansion felt less like a lonely memory, and more like a growing home where new friendships could bloom. One afternoon, Amir decided to return to the workshop behind the mansion. The small building still held the aircraft engine and the unfinished plans the pilot created for his son. Amir sat on the wooden bench and studied the drawings again. He imagined the pilot and his boy working together, their hands covered in grease, their faces full of excitement. Amir wished they had received the chance to finish the project. A gentle idea grew in his heart as he looked at the engine. Maybe he could honor the pilot by completing what he started. He knew nothing about flying machines, but he believed he could learn with help from the villagers and old manuals. The idea stayed with him for days and slowly turned into determination. Amir gathered the villagers who were good with machines and showed them the sketches. They studied the plans carefully, their faces lit with interest. They told Amir that building the flying machine would take time and effort, but it was possible if everyone worked together. Amir felt hope rising in his chest, because this project was no longer just about the pilot's dream, but also about building a shared purpose for everyone involved. The villagers agreed to help, and soon the workshop became a busy place filled with tools, conversations, and laughter. The work continued through warm mornings and cool evenings. Amir stood beside the villagers, learning how to handle parts he had never seen before. The sound of metal being shaped and wood being cut filled the air. Sunlight filtered through the open door, creating a warm glow that made the workshop feel alive. As they worked, Amir felt a quiet strength growing within him. He realized that he was no longer a man abandoned and forgotten. He was part of something meaningful, and his hands were building a future that connected the past with the present. Weeks passed, and the flying machine slowly took shape. Its frame stood proudly in the center of the workshop like a new hope rising from old dreams. Amir often paused to look at it with deep emotion. He imagined the pilot smiling with pride seeing the dream finally coming to life. He imagined the young boy laughing with excitement. These thoughts filled Amir's heart with a warmth he had not felt in many years. He felt closer to the pilot in spirit, and he believed the mansion was guiding him toward this moment. One peaceful evening, as Amir sat on the porch looking at the sky, he felt the first real sense of healing inside him. The pain of losing his children had lived in his heart for so long that he forgot what peace felt like. But now, with the mansion restored, the villagers by his side, and the flying machine nearing completion, he felt stronger and more grounded. He realized that sometimes life gives a second chance, not through the people who left, but through the places and moments that come unexpectedly and fill the empty spaces left behind. Later that night, Amir walked to the cold room on the upper floor. He opened the door and stepped inside with a calm heart. The air no longer felt heavy, and the silence carried a peaceful warmth instead of fear. He placed his hand on the wooden trunk and whispered that he was trying his best to honor the pilot's memory. He promised that the house would be full of life and laughter again. He closed the trunk with gentle care and walked out of the room feeling a quiet blessing in the air. On the morning the flying machine was completed, the villagers gathered around the workshop smiling with pride. Amir stood in front of the finished structure, unable to stop the tears that filled his eyes. He touched the smooth surface of the machine, feeling the love and effort of everyone who helped bring it to life. He believed the pilot's spirit watched over them with gratitude. The machine was not just a creation but a symbol of healing, a bridge between past dreams and present actions. The villagers encouraged Amir to take the first seat in the flying machine once it was tested safely. Amir smiled and thanked them, though he knew he might never fly it himself. For him, completing the dream was enough. It gave his life meaning again and reminded him that even abandoned hearts can find a new path when they least expect it. As the sun set behind the hills, Amir stood outside the mansion and looked at the bright windows glowing with golden light. The house felt warm, strong, and full of life. He realized that the place had healed him in ways he never imagined. He had arrived here as a lonely man abandoned by his children, but now he stood as a man with purpose, surrounded by community, and connected to a story bigger than himself. The mansion had chosen him, and he had chosen it back. Amir lifted his face toward the sky and felt the soft wind brush past him. For the first time in many years he felt whole again and ready for whatever life would bring next. The mansion behind him stood tall and proud, no longer a forgotten relic, but a home reborn with hope, memory, and love.